People always say that playing games today is all about, just getting things done, and it doesn't feel the same. Is it because of nostalgia, or were the old games really better? Our man, Italy, here seems to have the answer. Let's see what he has to say.
Hi, I'm Idle, or as you might better know
Idle.
me, the recently elected president of MMORPGs. That means everything I say, including my opinion, is true, and you
Does he have a mic taped to another mic? That's an odd setup, okay.
cannot disagree with me. I've been playing MMORPGs almost exclusively since I was just a little boy playing a point-and-click medieval fantasy game called RuneScape. And a lot has changed since then. I'm now a big boy who's playing a point-and-click medieval fantasy game called Old School RuneScape. But why is it that in the almost 20 years of me playing MMORPGs, I keep coming back to the same one? And not just the same one, a 2007 version of that game. Ooh, I know, it's nostalgia. That's a very good guess, and a very common guess, but no. And if you did guess that, you have no value as a person. Also, How did you get into my office? I live in your walls. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. But how can I, someone who's been playing RuneScape since 2004, actually say that nostalgia plays no part in my enjoyment of an old MMORPG? That's because I've done something that no man or woman has ever done in the history of human history. I played World of Warcraft Classic for 4 months straight.
Oh, God.
And it was awesome. I had never...
no. Are we going to have a classic Andy take on World of Warcraft right now? There's so many. Oh, my God, these classic Andys. Okay.
Played World of Warcraft before. I never tried a free trial. I never played at a friend's house or even watched anything World of Warcraft related. Other than that South Park episode, but that didn't exactly make me want to play World of Warcraft. I lived in a strictly RuneScape household. And by strictly RuneScape household, I mean I played RuneScape and my brother socialized. Originally, that was because my parents didn't want to shell out $15 a month for me to create an extremely sexy night elf whose body I would sell for gold, but...
Yeah, we all did that. Yeah, look, the $15 a month was a big gateway. It was a big hurdle for people to overcome. I had to convince my parents to pay $15 a month. That was a tough one. Yeah, I had to tell my dad, and he made me do chores around the house so I can get my WoW sub paid for. And then eventually I started convincing my mom to buy the time cards at Target. We'd go to Target and you get I think it was 60 days of time on the time card. You go scratch off the bag, put in the code. Yeah, that was a big thing back then. I mean, this subbing to an MMO, what the hell? It's crazy. It was a crazy concept, and yet we all did it because, shit, it was a good game, man. It was a good game.
Actually, I decided that my entire personality would be based around RuneScape anyways, and World of Warcraft would just distract from that. But with all the hype around WoW Classic Hardcore, a solo challenge where if your character dies, it gets deleted, I was finally tempted to make the leap. 4 months later, and I can confidently say, damn, yeah, that's a pretty good game. I can use my unique experience of being literally brand new to not just an MMO, but an older version of that MMO to really analyze the experience of new versus old MMORPGs. So with that said, if it's not... I'm actually going to be standing the rest of the video. Can we pan the camera up? So with that said, if it's not just nostalgia that's separating these older MMORPGs from their newer counterparts, including things like RuneScape 3 and World of Warcraft Retail, then what is actually going on here?
Yeah,
is there actually a tangible design difference in these MMORPGs that are coming out today? Well, that's what the entire video...
I'll say it right now. He's probably going to get at monetization. Monetization has changed the way games are made. Unfortunately, we can probably thank Fortnite a lot for that, but this started to happen before Fortnite. But the whole monetization of a game and the style in which they try to milk the whales or milk the players for money, that has bled into game development, unfortunately. So games really aren't made the way Classic was made anymore, in terms of pushing for longevity, trying to create content that'll keep people subbed, that kind of stuff. Now it's created with microtransactions in mind, and that doesn't create good gameplay. It doesn't. It kind of fucks up the whole, it puts gameplay second, and cosmetics and other things, and how do we find a way to charge extra for this? That's the kind of mindset that starts to leak into game development, and it makes a lesser product at the end of the day. Diablo Immortal, yeah. Well, mobile gaming is a completely different issue. Keep watching
it, you little baby boy or girl. Hey, let me look at your internet search history, and let me see that internet traffic too. Whoa, wait, who are you? I'm a malicious third party. and I want to look at everything you're doing. No, I'm helpless and also defenseless against this very situation. What am I going to do? Don't worry, it's taken care of.
It's an ad.
Oh my god, thank you so much. Who are you? I'm Atlas VPN.
Yep.
The sponsor of today's video. Atlas VPN is great for keeping your data and internet traffic secure from malicious third parties.
It makes money too.
As you just saw, I handle
money.
those, no problem. But Atlas can do a lot more than just keeping you safe. Personally, I like to use it to watch my favorite shows that I can't watch in America. For example, I can use Atlas VPN on my phone to connect to a UK server and then easily watch one of my favorite sports shows right now, Welcome to Wrexham on Disney+. And the best part is I can use Atlas VPN on my phone, my computer, my iPad, any device I would ever watch anything on. So click the link in the description right now to get Atlas VPN for only $1.83 a month. Plus you'll get 3 months extra. Plus there's a 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not completely satisfied with it. That's an 82% discount just by clicking the link in the description.
Damn,
wow, but
not bad.
I bet to get access to all this awesome stuff, it's probably super expensive. Did you not just hear what it's not expensive. It's a huge discount. Click the link in the description and you get the huge discount. You heard what I said, right? Anyway, I have more internet crimes to fight, so goodbye. Come with me to my classroom. We're gonna do a quick lesson. Hello class, my name is... It's still idle. MMORPG, contrary to popular belief, is an acronym. It stands for Massively Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Game. The astute among you have noticed this little guy right here. Game. I'm gonna let you all in on a little secret about games. They're supposed to be fun. I mean, yeah, baseball is a game and that's not fun at all, but that's more of like the exception that proves the rule. So if I'm going to make the claim that older MMORPGs are better than newer ones, I need to prove that older MMORPGs are more fun. So what?
They were made different, I'm telling you. They were.
Makes
it's all about monetization.
An MMORPG fun. MMORPGs are such a weird genre because a lot of the mechanics that exist in them, like the questing and the leveling experience, would be universally regarded as fucking terrible if they were put in a single-player game. But unlike single-player games, the fun part of an MMO is the grind, the time investment allowing your character to
growing in strength. See, the MMORPG is the game that it's supposed to technically is the most time-respecting game. Now, it doesn't respect your time in terms of like day-to-day activities and the grinds and all that shit, but it respects your time in that it is a constant investment in getting better. There is no end to it, right? Like this is not a campaign you play through like God of War or The Witcher or something where, you know, you get stronger as you play through it and then it ends and that's it. You're done. No. MMORPGs, when you're playing it, in your mind, you're just thinking, I'm getting better today and tomorrow and the day after, and I'm going to continue to get better for an infinite time. Because when 15-year-old Sam started playing this game, he never thought, well, he did. He thought, but never thought at the same time, that 32-year-old or 33-year-old Sam would be continuing to play this game and still getting better. See, 33-year-old Sam's character can fucking curb stomp 15-year-old Sam's character, right? Because I'm so much more powerful, so much stronger, my gear is better, everything's better about me now, except the fact that I have lower back pain that'll never go away anymore. But the in-game version of me has only gotten better over the last almost 20-some years. And that's what an MMO does. It's a constant grind to get better. It's that dopamine hit every time you get a little bit better that really hooks MMO players. And I can't play any other genre, honestly. I love MMOs. It's my favorite. I love it.
Tangibly power up in a world that is full of other real people you can interact with is, for me at least, an unmatched feeling. Yeah, sure, getting a quest to kill 25 Oomfleet flops isn't a lot of fun, but what is fun is watching a bar or number go up until you gain a level, allowing you to gain a new ability.
Younger Sam, I knew the hairline was cut. Yeah, okay. Yeah, younger Sam did have more hair. That's true.
And with this new ability, going to kill 50 more Oomfleet flops, but, you know, faster. Okay, but seriously, the slow progression of MMOs is part of what I love about them. Walking around the game world and seeing people who have put that time in and are way more powerful than I am, but knowing that I can hit that same power level is super engaging to me.
I remember being like a level 20-some night elf, sitting in Ironforge, looking at all the other characters and seeing a like paladin in full judgment set for the first time ever and being like, damn, this guy is a fucking badass. He's put in the time, he's put in the grind, and that's why he's so sick looking. And I'm gonna do that. It used to be like motivating just to see shit. Even just watching somebody run around on a mount back in vanilla WoW was like, oh, it's so motivating. I want to get to level 40 and grind out the gear, grind out the gold, so that way one day I can have a mount too. Like these things were crazy. They were crazy addictive and good and motivating, and that's part of the MMO intrigue.
Progression in an MMO isn't just limited to gear, abilities, or level. Like in any game, you as the player will get better at it the more you play it. But with MMORPGs, you can get better by playing with other people, like doing your first dungeon.
Well, WoW causes hair loss on the head, but the rest of your body gets more hairy the more you play. That's the truth.
World of Warcraft, and having your team walk you through the mechanics of it all. There's also the added thrill of doing a dungeon with a group that thinks they're playing an esport and will call you a slur if you don't give them a shield at the exact right moment. There's just something amazing and unique about the social aspect of progression that a single-player game could never really have. Another thing that is extremely important in the enjoyment of MMORPGs is...
Socializing in WoW is a huge thing. It's honestly why I started streaming, because during Shadowlands and COVID and everything, I missed the social aspect of the game, and the player base had dropped so much that I was like, how do I still raid and interact with people and have fun, but I can't do it in game? Like World of Warcraft's not providing that for me right now because it doesn't exist in the game, because everyone's just doing solo content. They're running their fucking chore-gas and then logging off, or there's just not enough players to play with because cross-faction raiding wasn't even a thing back then. So I was like, I'll just start streaming and I'll try to find like-minded degenerates on Twitch to play with. Here we are, all those years later.
Clear goals at each and every stage of the game. If there's even a slight lull in what a player's objective should be or how to get to the next zone, then they're extremely likely to log out and never log back in. These lulls in gameplay are what are commonly referred to as quit moments. The vice president of MMORPGs, Josh Strife Hayes, has a great video about quit moments. You should go watch it, but don't leave this video where I No, I can't say that on YouTube. The thing about quit moments is that they don't just happen when there's nothing to do, they can also happen when there's way too much to do. This is something known as decision paralysis, and you might have experienced it when you scroll through Netflix trying to find something to watch, but in the end, you and your partner just end up opening YouTube and watching some random video that they really don't want to watch, but you're interested in, and you just kind of force them to watch it. And if you're one of those...
The too much to do issue is a big issue. Because anybody who's previously played WoW, even if you just make a new character right now, you'll see the issue. It hits you right in the face when you log in. But especially somebody who hasn't played in a while and is like, hey, maybe I want to try Dragonflight for 10.2 or something. They log in and they are slapped in the face with tons of on-screen text, right? Like, oh, go do this. And then all of a sudden a floating head flies by and says, hey, you got to do this quest. And then a little Murloc walks up beside him, pulls on their ass cheek and says, hey, I got a quest for you. And then there's, oh, ignore all those quests. Go do the campaign quest because you got to do that before you do anything else. And oh, after you finish the campaign, you should probably start, up-leveling this shit and collecting this currency so you can go buy these things. There's so much to do. The too much to do complex really just, and I have a friend who literally logged in and then quit. Like right away, he was like, dude, there's too much to do. I'm going to wait till the next expansion, maybe when there's a more of a reset here. But I can't get into this game right now. And it overwhelms you and it makes you quit. That definitely happens.
Significant others who's been forced to watch this video about MMOs despite never even setting foot in one and not knowing what run escape is. Hi. How's it going? Think of MMOs with extremely complex crafting systems that devs spent hundreds of hours designing and developing to create a unique experience. It sounds like it should be pretty cool, right? But then that MMO walks up to you and is like, hey, nice log. Here's an extraordinarily deep crafting system showing all of the weapons and armors and supplies you can craft with that one log, despite the fact that you don't even know how to equip items yet. I don't know, like, that would scare me. You have to ease me into your scary crafting system. Yeah. When an MMORPG has nicely paced, well-thought-out progression, it can be one of the most amazing experiences to play through, and it makes a large time investment that most of the genre requires feel fun and relatively easy. Okay, but this video isn't about how to make a fun MMO. It's about why older MMOs were just better. So what about new MMORPGs isn't working? Why can
They are
99.99% of the
overcomplicated,
new
that is
ones
an
coming
issue.
out not hold their player base for more than a month or two? And why are constantly updated old MMOs like RuneScape 3 and World of Warcraft Retail bleeding players? This can be pretty complicated, and we're gonna get into some deep economics here. So let me leave my presidential office and head over to my business office.
He's gonna get into monetization for sure. It's a major issue.
Business. I love money, and let's go capitalism. Thank you all for joining me for this very important business presentation. I know you have busy schedules, and I appreciate you making the time. Couldn't agree more. Let's just get right into it. Let's take a look at this graph that I made using imaginary numbers,
RuneScape looks
but I
horrific.
think is generally accurate. This blue line represents the demand for MMORPGs, which starts off a little bit lower in the early 2000s.
There's
but
definitely a lot more competition today than there was back in 2004 when World of Warcraft came out. That is very true.
peaks in 2007 with games like World of Warcraft, Wrath of the Lich King, Guild Wars, and RuneScape all dominating the market. This red line down here represents the market saturation, aka how many MMORPGs are out there to be played. When game companies started to catch wind of just how much money Blizzard was making from World of Warcraft, their little capitalist bones started rattling in their wrinkly old skin, and with each vibration, a new MMORPG was released. And so the market saturation started going up at an extremely rapid pace. This coincided with a stagnant and then declining demand for MMORPGs. Great question. How does that affect the quality of the MMORPGs that were coming out then? Every new game was competing to set itself apart from World of Warcraft. And for all since
the WoW killers. Oh yeah, every year a new WoW killer was coming out. I remember these days. I remember when Warhammer was going to be a WoW killer, or WildStar was going to be a WoW killer. Every single MMO that came out was the next WoW, was the next thing that was going to take over the world, and they weren't, to say the least. Yeah.
MMORPGs are a huge commitment and time investment, you're going to need to do something special to tear players away from what they're already playing. So games started trying to get a little bit wacky and crazy with their systems. Systems are what all games are built on. They're the way that combat works, the skilling works, abilities, talents. If you were trying to pry people away from World of Warcraft, for example, and all you did was a little Control-C, Control-V action of everything World of Warcraft does, it just wouldn't be able to convince enough people to switch. And making an MMO is expensive, so it almost definitely wouldn't make the investment worth it. That's even if you do everything a little bit better than World of Warcraft. So logically, what these MMOs need to do is a common strategy in the dating world: peacocking. Peacocking is when a male uses ostentatious clothing and behavior to attract a female and to stand out from other competing males. In this case, MMOs are the males and we are the females. MMORPGs would start developing increasingly complex systems like fast-paced combat, seasonal game modes, permadeath, full PvP, insanely deep crafting, tech trees, nothing that is inherently a bad idea or poor design, but things that unless executed perfectly would do more overwhelming a player than engaging them. Just look at all these MMOs released from 2010 to 2013, the point at which the MMO market was already well saturated. Most of these I'm sure you haven't heard of, but if you have, they probably weren't your primary MMORPG.
Guild Wars 2, Pirates.
A lot of the notable ones, though, had one of those complex systems I was talking about.
Wakfu? What the fuck is that? There's a lot of weird MMOs. Active? It's still active? The hell? Freemium.
You had games like Terra with its non-target combat system with a heavy use of a dodge mechanic, not unlike the Souls franchise.
WildStar had kind of the same thing in terms of like the mechanics. It had the frontal cones and a lot of dodging and shit.
For its time, but it did officially close its doors just last year after Vice President Josh Hayes made a scathing review about it, and they bowed out in shame. You had Rift with its Soul system, which was basically a competitor to WoW's really popular talent system.
Yeah.
Now, Rift did really well when it came out. It was the prophesized WoW killer that MMO players and blogs were looking for years. But even Rift started losing players only a few years after its release until it was eventually acquired by a company that is not exactly known for helping MMOs to become better versions of themselves. Game goes right behind me, isn't it? Stupid. You also had Star Wars, The Old Republic, with its morality system like from the Knights of the Old Republic.
That was
cool. And it also was different than other MMOs because it was Star Wars, and other MMOs didn't have the license to be Star Wars. Not gonna lie, Star Wars: The Old Republic didn't do too much different. It was still a good MMORPG, but just like the rest of them, it really didn't last that long in terms of having a huge player base. But I know what you're thinking. Why haven't I mentioned one of the biggest MMORPGs ever that was released between 2010 and 2013 that allowed you to explore the world?
Oh no, the Final Fantasy Andes are entering the chat.
Franchise.
Oh no.
Hello Kitty Online. Unfortunately, like so many other MMOs on this list, Hello Kitty Online closed its doors in 2017. But luckily, its website is still up, and we can see the last message the developers ever put out to its player base. Hello, everyone. Springtime has finally come. Easter is just around the corner, and we're holding several events in celebration. We'll post details soon, so keep tuned in.
They didn't even miss
out on fun
the
games
end was near.
And prizes. See you in game. The Hello Kitty Online team.
Oh, God.
They never did post those details.
Damn.
Wait, why was the last post in 2012? It shut down in 2017.
Damn,
the other thing an MMO can do to
everybody
stick out, which doesn't necessarily require a ton of added complexity, is by appealing to a niche. Most of the time, if an MMO wants to appeal to a niche, it's going to go for full PvP. It sounds exciting, right? Everywhere in the world gives you this sense of danger because at any moment you could be struck down. It's even more exciting when the developers go even harder and make the PvP system full loot, meaning everything you have is lost on death. This is exactly what games like Mortal Online do. But the reality is, appealing to a niche, especially a hardcore one, usually means your game is doomed to remain small. Especially since in the gaming world, MMORPGs
was the thing that WoW changed for MMOs forever, because believe it or not, the genre of MMO was a niche genre. Back when RuneScape was out, and even EverQuest was very niche. Like, you had to be a super hard. First, you had to own a PC. Back then, that was niche by itself. Like, having a PC in your home, who the fuck are you, Bill Gates? Like, what are you doing? So that was by itself like a limiting factor. Then you had to be nerdy enough to own a PC that could run games. And then you had to install a game called EverQuest that was weird as fuck. It was like this super high fantasy, because even high fantasy back then was niche. But you had to do that, and then you had to play this game, okay? So there's like 100 limiting factors leading up to the fact that you are an EverQuest player. But everything changed, believe it or not when World of Warcraft came out, but when Lord of the Rings came out. Lord of the Rings brought the fantasy genre to the forefront, and it was no longer a nerdy thing, but it was mainstream. Fantasy was seen as a mainstream thing for the first time ever in the history of society. It was no longer this nerdy thing that you set up in your basement and, you and a couple other pimple-faced kids jerked off to it. No. This was now mainstream. This fucking movie won every award possible, and it showed the world that high fantasy done correctly is badass. Now enter World of Warcraft, the most perfectly timed, perfectly placed, and well-made MMORPG in the history of MMORPGs, right? And it was what's it called? Casual enough that anybody could play it, right? It wasn't a hardcore game. World of Warcraft was essentially the casual Andy version of MMORPGs, but it brought it to the mainstream. So now fantasy is mainstream, and the MMO that can bring MMOs to mainstream came out at the same time. The perfect storm, World of Warcraft was born, and never again has that been repeated. That was the most, epic moment in terms of MMORPG history and high fantasy history in the world, and I don't think that'll ever happen again. But it changed MMOs forever because it brought a whole new player base, a massive player base, into a genre that had never seen a player base that large before.
Are already a niche. Just think back to New World's development. New World was one of the most hyped MMOs in recent memory, at least, one that has actually been released. One of the features it was most proudly and loudly boasting about was its PvP, until they realized that if they wanted to survive and even thrive, they were going to need a strong PvE experience too, since PvP was just too niche. In the end, they did both decently, but neither really well, and the game just kind of, And stop typing that comment that you still play New World, okay? Who are you trying to impress? Another fun thing that happened before the release of New World was Amazon Game Studios putting out a statement that said, hey, by the way, we are going to have cosmetic microtransactions, but don't rule out non-cosmetic microtransactions. Like, Amazon, the game isn't even out. Can you at least let us, play the game before you keep telling me how you're gonna milk me like the MMO-addicted cretin that I am? But to be fair, Amazon does mean the money. Jeff Bezos is only the richest man on Earth.
No. Wait.
how is he supposed to afford to make an MMO without $5 rainbow lines, you know? But that does bring me nicely to one of the biggest problems with modern MMOs. Microtransactions.
Yes.
That's right. Microtransactions aren't cool, and I'm not afraid to say it. Hey kid, you want to buy some microtransactions? They'll help you level up, if you know what I mean. No thanks. I'd rather do things the old-fashioned way.
So I spent like 40 hours killing a boss to get the last part of this shield. It's not very good.
You should be proud.
It's not a very good shield.
The big issue is there's no incentive for MMORPGs, both old and new, to not introduce microtransactions in some form. The way microtransactions work from the company's perspective is not to have every player spend a little bit of money. It's actually to get a few players to spend a lot of money.
Milk your whales. Do it. Milk those whales. Start a whale milking farm and just milk the shit out of them. Because they are going to... And by themselves, they justify microtransactions, unfortunately. I mean, to the point where, /spit has been removed from the game of World of Warcraft because other players recognize the fact that microtransactions are a self-fulfilling prophecy. They exist because they make money, and they make money because they exist. And the people that exist that make money off of, that pay money for them are the whales. So every time somebody saw somebody on a storm out in World of Warcraft, they saw them as the problem. Like, microtransactions exist because you, motherfucker, you're the one buying the shit. That's why they exist, because they wouldn't be doing microtransactions if they didn't make money. And they make money because of fuckers like you. So /spit. And Blizzard removed that from the game because of that very issue.
Those players are called whales. The reason every MMO is using microtransaction models is because even if your player base and subscriber count is dwindling, you'll probably have at least a couple of whales keeping your game afloat, which in turn encourages the devs to add even more microtransactions. And since, as I've mentioned a lot already, MMOs are extremely expensive to make, the companies funding development really just care about the bottom line and not the integrity of the game. But I'm just a little MMO player and YouTuber. Clearly I have no idea what an MMORPG needs or what the players want. I mean, I'm not some great game development company like Blizzard that is fully in touch with their community's desires.
Have you ever thought about adding servers for previous expansions as they were then?
No. And by the way, you don't want to do that either. You think you do, but you don't.
Yeah.
Listen, I know
Look, here's the thing. I mean, microtransactions are understandable. You know, we live in an economy where, hey, you got to make money. But the thing that pisses people off about microtransactions and WoW is we thought we were above this. Why? Because World of Warcraft is still like the only MMO with a monthly sub payment. So we thought, hey, and this is why I used to justify the sub in my own mind. I used to think that, hey, by paying for the game monthly, I am creating a better game, a game without microtransactions, because Blizzard doesn't have to do that. They can focus on content because every month, every player in the game is giving them $15 a month to continue to make the game better. Unfortunately, Blizzard has decided, Activision, and Bobby needs extra boats, I guess, has decided to go both. They do both now. We have microtransactions and a monthly sub. Microtransactions didn't remove the monthly sub. No. We have both. We get both, and it's not a best of both worlds scenario. It's a best of shit worlds. Two shit worlds combining to create a ball of shit.
Transactions have been complained about for over like a decade already, but it is important to understanding part of why new MMOs suffer. And it's not just the fact that people can boost how fast they gain experience or buy better gear. The cosmetics are almost as big of an issue to me. There are two big things I find really cool in MMORPGs. The first is immersion into this massive game world that is literally bigger than just my character because it's populated by tons of other real people. The other is being able to see people's gear at a glance and understand, wow, they earned a really powerful weapon, even if I'm brand new.
Transmog kind of fucked that up. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I like Transmog, but Transmog did fuck up the identifiable part of like, oh, this guy's got a big dick because he's got this sword from this raid and he must have done this thing to get it. That doesn't really exist anymore.
the game, it tells me they either grinded for the drop, beat a difficult quest, or spent time getting filthy rich. Cosmetic microtransactions totally ruin both of those things. I mean, seeing someone in WoW retail riding this crazy winged horse mount at level 10 that you can get from the microtransaction shop, which is introduced to you by an in-game quest, by the way, it just kind of breaks my immersion and makes mounts earned from raids feel less cool. But that's nothing compared to cosmetics that are just completely out of place, like RuneScape 3's headbutt mining, or RuneScape 3's wings, or RuneScape 3's baby panda, or RuneScape 3's Daruma. Oh my. What the fuck is that?
Okay, but what about WoW tokens and old school RuneScape's bonds? Those let you buy golds for money. Isn't that a microtransaction?
Who the fuck are you? But yeah, to be clear, bonds and WoW tokens are microtransactions, and I don't like those either. I understand that they do have their advantages, like old school RuneScape's bonds mean that free-to-play players can get membership without spending any real-life money. But the ability to buy in-game currency with real-life money is just always going to be a net negative to me. Just because a microtransaction isn't directly letting you buy levels or gear or giving you gross, ugly cosmetics doesn't mean it's good. It's still bad for the integrity of the game. These companies have somehow conditioned us into being like, well, some microtransactions are okay. But the truth is, no microtransactions is always better than any microtransactions. And if your game needs microtransactions and boosts to be playable and enjoyable,
and profitable,
you've made a bad game. Listen, MMORPGs these days are in a really tough spot. They're coming out at a time where the market is oversaturated and the demand has really never been lower. And we're also in the era where you need a large investment to make an MMORPG. It's not like back in the late 90s when one guy could make Ultima, or three brothers could make RuneScape, or a relatively small team at Blizzard could make all of World of Warcraft. The truth is, modern MMORPGs are kind of at a natural disadvantage due to factors mostly outside of their control. Okay, but enough about modern MMORPGs sucking, because
it's true. If a game costs more to make, it's gonna, you need to make more off of it, right?
Not really the point of the video. Older MMORPGs have a lot of things that make them special that aren't just new MMO bad, old MMO gooder. Wait, hold on. I'm getting a call. Hello? No, I think you're mistaken. No, that can't be true. Well, 1 second. Sorry, this person on the phone is telling me that you aren't subscribed, but that's ridiculous because you are subscribed, right? Anyway, let's go back to my business office so we can look at numbers about older MMORPGs. This isn't the way to my business office. It's this way, sorry. You'll remember this graph that showed us that new MMORPGs are joining an oversaturated market with low demand. But the absolute inverse is true back in the late 90s and early 2000s, when demand was on the rise and the saturation was still really low. I mean, back then, all you had was like Ultima, Guild Wars, EverQuest, Neverwinter, RuneScape, and World of Warcraft, which sounds like a lot, but in reality, it's
casual Andes. This was the casual man's MMO. The rest of these were very hardcore.
Not that much. And that's especially when you consider that when World of Warcraft came out, EverQuest was just gone. EverQuest died. Sorry, EverQuest fans, but you know it's true. So what does this lack of competition mean? It means simplicity. The MMORPGs that were first onto the scene in the late 90s and early 2000s weren't fighting to stand out against an ocean of competitors. Yes, you still needed to do something different than the other games on the market, but you didn't need to dig too far deep to do that. This meant that the underlying systems that drive all these games were really very simple, clean, and usually well designed. And to be clear, a simple system doesn't mean it's bad.
Tab targeting was everywhere. Talent systems were everywhere. I mean, the World of Warcraft and Blizzard in general, they were never known for like innovating. They just created a better version of something that already existed, and that's what WoW was. It was the best version of any MMO that already existed.
It can actually mean the exact opposite. I mentioned before how overly complex systems of new MMOs are often a turnoff more than a draw for new players. Well, the inverse is true for simple systems. Think about the system that most players think of first with every MMO. Combat. Sure, World of Warcraft Classic has a whole host of abilities, but the number of abilities per class isn't actually that much, and the fact that you earn them in a slow progression from levels 1 to 60 makes it extremely easy to digest. Compare this to WoW Retail, where not only are there more abilities and more classes, but leveling leveling is 100 times faster. I mean, speedrunners can get to max level in under 5 hours.
Dude,
that's something that will take you hundreds of hours in Classic, even for the fastest players. That means you're constantly getting new abilities and it can be hard to keep up. It muddies what was once a simple, clean system.
The fastest Classic leveling guy was like, you can't quote me on this, but I thought it was like 60 hours or something was like the fastest somebody leveled from 0 to 60 in Classic.
Other than that, the combat is target-based, so you click on an enemy, button mash your ability rotation, and you're off. It's so simple, but it's smooth as butter and a lot of fun to get into. If you ask any WoW Classic player what they love about the game, they'll usually tell you the combat is at the top of their list. I mean, the reason there was a mass exodus from WoW to Final Fantasy XIV a couple years ago is because Final Fantasy XIV has a very similar combat system, and WoW players are not willing to sacrifice that in their MMO. Old school RuneScape's combat system is literally point and click. Like seriously, you point and click and watch your character do damage. You don't even have to watch. Nice. You can actually just get up and go do something else if you want. You know, you could get a job maybe.
Yeah, it was like 52 hours.
Wondering if you're gonna do that. Or you're just gonna keep watching the video? Okay. All right, and yet when Jagex decided to change RuneScape's combat forever in 2011 with the evolution of combat, the game started to bleed players, and that's because the game was well designed around the simplicity of the old combat system. Simple combat systems can still be deep, rich, rewarding experiences. Making an insane getaway with your abilities in WoW Classic Hardcore is one of my favorite experiences I've had in any MMO lately. And old school RuneScape is still using the exact same combat system from 2004, but has found ways to design content around it that makes it more engaging. They do this by forcing you to swap attack styles or prayers or gear at the right time. They haven't had to change anything about how combat at its core works to do any of that, so the system is still completely approachable for anyone. This simplicity on the surface is what attracts so many new players to these games. And after investing a ton of time into learning these mechanics like combat, they get to take advantage of their earned knowledge and do more with the combat system than just using a stronger ability. What goes hand in hand with the simplicity of the combat system is the beauty of the gear progression in these old MMOs.
Yeah, I want to just say simplicity of combat system also goes hand in hand with boss fights and other mechanics like that. World of Warcraft has gotten overly bloated and complicated when it comes to boss fights. I mean, the raids, when you talk about how crazy and insane Sepulchre of the first ones was compared to like Ragnaros, they look like two different games. They're two different games. The mechanics of the old boss fights were so easy, and I feel like Blizzard realized that. Like, Sepulchre just pushed things way too far. Halandrus was butt-fucking everybody for, like, a week. They couldn't even progress past him. And then you got to Anduin, and it was time to get one-shot by 30 different mechanics. If any single person in the raid fucked anything up, you were dead. And those things were hard. They made the game not fun. It had overly complicated, way overly complicated. So they're kind of returning to, you know, a more simplistic version of fights now, but it's still nowhere near what like vanilla WoW fights were. And that's unfortunate because, you know, and the fight against add-ons have kind of caused that. But old simplicity, yeah, I kind of miss that sometimes.
RuneScape's gear progression is iconic at this point. We all remember finally getting to equip our first rune plate body at level 40 defense after completing Dragon Slayer, or when we finally got a pair of dragon plate legs that looked so cool back in the day. And there was no dopamine rush on the same level as getting your first tier 70 armor when you got a Barrows drop for the first time. The equipment tiers in RuneScape were laid out extremely clearly, and any player, old or new, could figure it out really quickly. And because the inventory items and the equipment models matched 1-to-1, it was really easy for any player to know what another player was wearing at a glance.
Yeah.
This meant there was a lot of intrinsic motivation just walking around the world or standing at a bank and seeing a player wearing a
standing in Ironforge and looking at that paladin in full judgment. Now, unfortunately, even if somebody's wearing a tier set, you don't know where it came from half the time or what it is, because there's like 5 different color variations, 5 different difficulties. There's PvP versus PvE. Like back in vanilla, PvE sets were not just a color variation on PvP sets or vice versa. PvP sets were recognizable. Like, people knew when they saw somebody in full PvP gear, they were like, that guy is a fucking PvPer and he's a badass one because he's got this armor equipped. Now it's just like, you know, there's like 5 different colors. You got to go on and look it up online of why they have the purple version of the set and where'd they get that from. It's just not as good as it used to be.
Dragon chain bucket. You would see that and be like, damn, that guy's rich, or he's really good at the game. Or he
Or
reroll
both.
traded. That's also possible. He could have done that. Even though World of Warcraft Classic doesn't have the tiers laid out so plainly, it still does a lot to make the gear progression simple and really motivating. First of all, item rarity. Item rarity isn't and wasn't a new system by any means, but it's a nice and easy way for players at a glance to understand if they just got something worth taking a closer look at. Sure, it's not always perfect, but it does what it needs to do. Then you have the stats. There's only 5 main stats, and it's not hard to figure out which stats are best for which class. So you end up really only prioritizing 2 or 3 that you want.
I feel like that's the reason item level came out, was because there had like the stats became too much. Like they kept adding more and more stats to the game, and now nobody pays attention to that anymore. You just got item level, and if you can't figure that out, you just sim it, because looking at the stats and trying to figure out yourself, that shit became impossible.
Items, like a hunter wanting agility to increase its range attack power, or mages wanting intellect to increase their max mana. When you progress further, you'll find items that have more than just basic stats, like items with straight attack power, spell power, or effects that can happen on hit. Since these sorts of enchantments come later, a player won't be overwhelmed by them right off the bat. This keeps the progression simple, and it also helps your power feel like it's really scaling with each gear upgrade. I just really want to stress how much slow progression was key to these older MMOs. Yeah, we all hate when you try an MMO and you don't like it, and the other players who love it are like, well, did you invest 500 hours?
Yeah.
If you didn't invest 500 hours, you don't actually know the MMO. Like, shut up. That's bad design. That I don't want to have to invest 500 hours to enjoy your game. But slow progression doesn't mean bad progression. It just means you reach meaningful milestones at every step of the way. But that you don't become, you know, a complete god by level 5 or something. I mean, in WoW Classic, you won't get your first green uncommon item until level 10 if you're lucky. And you're not gonna get your first blue item until your first dungeon. And trust me, when you get something like that, it feels so good. Most of the items you'll come across in just your leveling and questing experience have no stats at all and are kind of worthless, but that's okay, because it makes the real upgrades feel that much better. Meanwhile, in WoW Retail, you will leave the tutorial with a blue item, and every single item you find is basically going to be better than what you had before, making upgrades feel like an expected chore almost, instead of this dopamine rush that it should be. But enough about simplicity, because that's not even the thing that made these games so good. There's this almost intangible quality that older MMOs had that new MMOs can't, or maybe even shouldn't have. Older MMOs were so freaking crusty, man. The dictionary defines crusty as having or presenting a hard outer layer or covering.
The giving trees.
Old MMOs have that. Old school RuneScape's extremely dated.
Crusty. I mean, yeah, look, old school MMOs have something that no new school MMO will ever have, and that is, it was your first time. Everybody remembers their first time. You'll never forget your first time, and it'll never feel as good as your first time. You'll get better at it. You know, you'll be quicker, faster, more efficient. That's great. And the end result will still be the same. You've gotten better, more power. Everything about you has progressed because of your skill progression, and yet it doesn't feel like the first time, for the simple reason that it isn't your first time. And that'll never be recaptured. All the classic Andys can say all they want that it feels like the old. It's not the old days. It's not. You have less hair. You've slipped a disc in your back. And you now have a mortgage. Okay, it's not going to be like how it was when you were 15. It's just not. But that doesn't mean that you can't kind of recapture that feeling a little bit, even in retail, when that sense of exploration is brought back. And I feel like that hasn't happened in a while. But maybe a fully revamped world will bring some of that back. I don't expect it to feel like the first time, but hey, you never know. Maybe you get a little remembrance of it.
Graphics and combat system that have been beloved by the community ever since they were changed in the main RuneScape back in the 2010s. World of Warcraft Classic and Guild Wars' weirdly smooth mountain ranges. You know what I mean? Look at these. That's not what mountains look like, but it has this charm to it. The fact that in World of Warcraft, to go from one dock to another, you have to literally take a boat. And if you miss that boat, you have to wait for it to do a round trip, and then you have to get on it, and then you have to wait some more, and you just kind of like dance with the people who are also on the boat. It's a wonderful experience. I love this. Or with old school RuneScape, where you have
Makes
to
the world feel
walk
bigger.
literally everywhere until you get enough mage levels to get some actually useful teleports. Sure, these are things that maybe aren't objectively good game design, but they're things that add this level of charm to the game worlds that I just love. I love having
The
to
true
walk from
classic
place to
experience,
place or
Wade.
taking an extremely inefficient flight path instead of just being
Yeah, I
able
used
to
to get up from
teleport
my
to any
computer
city I've been to before. It
back
makes
when I
these
played
worlds
Classic
feel
and I was
big,
flying,
and it
'cause
feels
it
like
takes
I'm
so
just
long.
a small part of it. And if you're a game developer, I just want to say that lodestones and fast travel are a plague on society. If your world needs them, you need to design a better world. There, I said it, and I'm not taking it back. I'm sorry if that was mean.
I just don't know about that. That's kind of I don't know. That is a classic Andy take, and I don't think there's problems with convenience. I don't think convenience is an issue if done right. But as your world gets bigger and bigger, you cannot expect somebody to fly on the old style Griffin to Kultiris, right, from the eastern side of Kalimdor. It's just not going to happen because the world just gets bigger. That's how it is. And yes, you need some convenience features to get around in it now. That makes sense. I don't like it when people say that it's because of convenience that the game is worse. Come on.
Adventure isn't the primary reason people play MMOs, but it's part of what makes it last forever to those who love them. And these crusty bits that exist in older MMOs don't, and
True
in many
potato,
cases
yes.
shouldn't exist in new MMOs.
What if you
so
took
if
the
what
wrong
made
flight
these
path?
older
You were
MMOs
fucked. You just had
great
to wait.
can't be replicated by a new MMO, is the genre just like doomed? Yes. Wait.
Yeah, I don't think
No.
so.
I know it might feel that way with all the MMORPGs that have come and gone over the years, when you consider especially that games that are backed by massive companies like Amazon can't even seem to break through. It just doesn't seem like anything will be able to. But there is one thing that is still out there that can make MMORPGs great again. Development
VR. Just kidding. Just kidding.
teams that care. Yeah, okay, that seems
There you
obvious,
go.
but
Why
it
was
is
thinking the
true.
same thing as
So
me.
many of these games are made by massive corporations that don't really care if they make a good game, they just care if they can make a big profit. And
Yeah.
even if the individual developers at these corporations
So
care,
he's saying the big studios are the problem. So he's telling me Ashes of Creation is going to be good because it's not made by a big game studio. Is that what he's saying?
they're going to get overruled by the higher-ups. But there are still development teams and studios out there that really prioritize bringing a new
was
and exciting
genius.
MMO experiences to the players.
I
think
promise you guys, if a new MMO came out, brand new, that had the issues of old World of Warcraft, you know, with the flight that we're talking about, travel and all that shit, and any other of the janky stuff that existed in classic WoW, if a fully new MMO came out that had those same issues, people would quit. I don't care what anyone says, people would quit. All the classic Andies would be like, hell no, that'd be the greatest thing ever. No, you'd quit. You'd quit. You say it's a shitty MMO and you'd quit. Because once you've experienced convenience in any way or experienced what modern day gaming is, you're not going to be okay with it. The only reason why classic Andies are okay with classic is because of nostalgia and the feeling it gives them, and because they've played it before. Like, they understand where that game came from. They understand classic WoW is an old game and it has classic WoW issues, and they're willing to overlook them because they're playing a game that they know was made back in 2004. But you can't do that today. That wouldn't work today. In today's gaming world, that shit would get review bombed. People would be on the forums complaining about how the issues the game has feel like this game came out fucking 20 years ago. Well, it did. You guys asked for that. It wouldn't work today, despite what anybody tells you.
one of the best examples of a recent MMO doing well is a game called Albion Online. I'll be honest, Albion isn't exactly my cup of tea, but I absolutely respect and appreciate it for what it is. Albion was released in 2017 by an, at the time, small but dedicated development team at a company called Sandbox
Yeah, sure, Camp
Interactive.
Shady.
It's got a deep,
We're an aging
complex
player base,
crafting
we don't have
system,
time.
nearly full world PvP, and some other stuff that I claimed can make an MMO unapproachable. But the way this development team, which is only around 80 people now, approached the design of these systems shows that they were out to make something special, and for hundreds of thousands of people who play Albion daily, it's exactly that. Take the world PvP, for example. Instead of just saying, you can be killed in this zone, but you're safe in this one, with a black and white system, not unlike WoW's PvP, Albion uses a color system. In blue zones, you're completely safe. In yellow zones, you can be attacked, and you can attack PvP flagged players.
Why did I think
but if
Albion
you lose
was
in a
like
fight,
some kind of
you
mobile
don't die. Instead, you'll be knocked down, and you'll lose some equipment durability. But red zones are where things get interesting. Like in yellow zones, only PvP flagged players are participating in PvP, but you can die, and you will lose all of your stuff. It's It's basically yellow zone with real consequences. And the final zone, called black zones, are the true PvP areas. There's no PvP flagging. If you go into a black zone, you are fair game for anyone to attack and kill you. And just like in red zones, you will lose everything. What's great about this system is that it adds another layer to the world design. Look at this map of the zones in Albion. There's this one black zone surrounding a city called Corellian, which has a lot of benefits versus normal cities, such as the black market. It makes players, even those not interested in PvP, have to make an interesting choice of braving a full PvP zone for the benefits that come from it, or play it safe and lose out. And think about old school RuneScape. Unlike classic WoW, old school RuneScape isn't a time capsule. It's been constantly updated since 2013. It's had a decade of dedicated.
So it got WoW Classic Plus. Classic Plus, yeah, that's what it's getting. This is what everyone wants.
And
Classic
new content
Plus,
updates.
baby.
So at this point, it's a whole new game from the snapshot taken in 2007. But the game is actually peaking in player count. That's because the old school RuneScape team is made up of people who play and love the game. People who go out of their way to respond
Let me say
to...
one quick thing about Classic Plus. You guys want all this fucking additional content. All the Andes want additional content in Classic. I promise you, they are going to go through that content and finish it in less than a month. And then they're going to go right back to the old Classic. And they'll be like, well, Classic Plus was fun, but Classic is the classic of classics. And that's why you got to go back and do that, because that's repeatable content. This Classic Plus shit is too different. Oh my God. You can't create content that's evergreen and lasts forever. It just doesn't work anymore because people are more efficient. People understand the game. I guarantee you, man, if they drop a new raid in Classic, that shit's going to be down in a week. And then they're going to look at each other with their dicks in their hands wondering what to do next. And they're just going to go play hardcore again.
And take note of player feedback. The care that goes into each content update in old school RuneScape ensures that even new things feel like they fit into that old mold. Yes, it's true. Sometimes they miss the mark, but it's rare, and when they do, it's just not a disaster. And just looking at the player count for old school RuneScape, it pretty much proves that nostalgia is not the reason people love that game. MMORPGs don't need to die out just because they can't be exactly like the ones we grew up with. The challenge is finding a team that cares enough and has the financial independence to make one of these next great MMORPGs. It also requires that we as players stop giving our money to companies that take advantage not only of the player bases, but of their employees, creating horrible, hostile work environments while delivering hollow gameplay experiences, driving away any of the developers who might actually care about the games and care about the players who play them. I'm gonna go play more WoW Classic Hardcore. Bye. Did you know that if I didn't have my Patreon supporters, I would literally be dead in a ditch right now because I am very sick, and the only way I can afford medicine is thanks to these people. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, you can do so with the link in the description. It's not required, but it's greatly appreciated, and I'll yell your name at the end of these videos.
But I can
Speaking of the end of these videos, if you made it this far, why don't you leave a comment saying, oops, I didn't mean to watch this. That way everyone will know that you are mentally ill. I want to give a huge shout out to the members of my tier. I can't do that. My throat hurts so bad.
Look, it was a good video. I don't think it was a bad video. It was a good video. It gave us some insight into how a lot of the classic Andes feel and everything else. I just don't think it's right. I think, retail WoW is the future of WoW. I already talked about this in another video, and it can be brought to light and, made better. That's it. The game can get better. The only way the game can get better is through retail.